Amen. Well, happy Resurrection Sunday, everyone. You know, Easter is Resurrection Sunday also. So I prefer to use this name or call it Happy or Resurrection Sunday, Happy Resurrection Sunday. I wanted to ask you a question. Have you ever had, or you or your friends had a situation when you try to renovate something? You buy a home and you start to do a little project, and when you renovate it, you discover some other issues, and you go deeper into the project, and it's a little bit more expensive, and then you buy some material, and you just get to the point where you realize that you cannot do it anymore, and you need to invite somebody else to help you. More than you expected. Today's story, when we're talking about Easter, it reminds me that situation. When you sign up to be a follower of Christ, and you thought it would be just a little renovation project, and once you get into this, you realize that you need to put half of the house apart, because you need to redo everything. The plumbing is bad, electrical system is not working, the structural issues there, and you start digging deeper and deeper. We're in this series, months-long series called Faces of Grace, a journey into God's unending love. And as much as it has something to do with discovering this new level of relationship and knowledge of God that you didn't even think was possible. As much as it is getting deeper into relationship with God, it's also discovering something that it's right in front of you, and you never even knew it exists. You were not aware of those things. Like, recently I went to Home Depot trying to buy some stuff, and I was going in this aisle. I know that I was looking for a plug, plumbing plug, and I knew that it was here in this aisle, and I was walking there like 3 times, could not see it. And then I don't like doing this, but I asked the worker in the Home Depot, I said, "Where is that plug?" And he says, "Right here, in front of me. I just didn't see it." You know, Easter is like that. Especially when we are talking about our disappointments and grievances and griefs and hurts, like disciples who lost their teacher, Jesus, in the cross. They were disappointed to the point where they left completely. And they did not see the obvious truth. And each time when I read this passage that Danny read, I don't get it. How is it Jesus told them so many times that he would die, he would be crucified, and then he would be resurrected, and they did not connect the dots, did not see it. And so that's the story of Easter. And I call it, do you know how I call this installment for today? The graveyard shift. Something is shifting, something is changing, something is moving in your faith and your relation to the Lord, the way how you understand the Lord. Because let's face it, we come from faith to faith, from glory to glory. We grow, we develop, we understand God deeper. In many cases, we come to a point where we say, "God, do I even know you?" My understanding of God, my knowledge of God, my awareness of God comes to a stop. And I asked this question, yesterday I thought everything was so clear, like disciples had. For them it was very understandable. Jesus Christ is the Messiah. He came here to deliver them from the oppression of Romans. And he will be a king. Very easy. And then all of a sudden, we had a cross, and their deliverer was crucified. And they put him in a tomb. My question to you is this. What do you do when your Lord died? And that's the story of Easter. And I pray that by the end of this message today, before you go home, you get inspired to proclaim the hope of resurrection, transforming the grievances, offenses, hurts, disappointments into a powerful, bold witness of God's glory. That I leave this place today knowing that I thought it was a dead end, full stop, period, but God puts a comma and say, this is just a little shift in your graveyard experience. And I wanted to, in this story, Luke 24, 1:12, there are three different points: broken hearts, disappointed people. I also see here risen hope. Because see, resurrection to me, it's not just a historical event, even though it is, but also it's the practical application to my situation today. How is resurrection affecting me today in my tomb experience, in my graveyard? What if I experience graveyard? I pray to God, no answer. I expected from God move in certain way, God did not move. I lost something that was so dear to me, and God did not intervene. So I'm coming to the Lord and I'm like, I expected God to move, but you didn't. And now I have to deal with the graveyard. And so my hope that you will experience this, something that I call graveyard shift. When this woman came to the grave, and instead of seeing the body of Jesus Christ there, they saw the stone moved away. And that is the practical application in my day today as a believer, as a follower of Christ. And finally, bold witness. See, that's what happens. When I experience the power of resurrection in my life, I cannot stand still. I will run around like crazy, like these women did, and they said, guess what? Christ is risen. I thought that was the end of the story. That was the end of this beautiful experiences that we had with this teacher, Jesus. But no, he has risen, and there is a continuation of the story. I thought that my personal story has ended. I don't have any escape. I don't have any future. I don't have any continuation. But no, this is just a comma. God prepared the best for the last. And that's the message of resurrection. That's the message of Easter today. The bold witness. But before I go into the passage, I wanted to give you this beautiful quote by Henry Nouwen, who said, in our deepest wounds, and I wanted to warn you that sometimes people tell me, they say, look, I don't have any wounds, I don't have any problems, I'm a happy person, so this message does not relate to me. I want to warn you that you might keep this message for the future. Because when the time comes and you need to go to the tomb, at least you will have something to deal with. So here is the quote. In our deepest wounds, the reason Jesus meets us, not to erase the pain, but to fill it with the hope that sends us to others. That's the message for today. But I wanted to go back into the passage that Dan read to us. And this is the focal or the main point in this passage. In Luke 24:5, at the end of the verse, that's the phrase that angels, the questions, rhetorical questions that angels use or ask women. Why do you look for the living among the dead? And the question was directed to women, but actually it's directed to me, directed to us, directed to you. Why are you seeking or looking for the living among the dead? Why are you looking for life in the tomb? Why do you look for something that will give you a thrill of life in something that inherently doesn't have life? That's a tomb. That's a good question. And that question sounds to me today. Oleg, Pastor Oleg, why do you look for life, for living in addiction? Why do you look for life in your grief? Why do you look for life in your pain, in your hurt? There's no life there. Move on, because Christ has risen. He moves on. He is out of the grave. I remember recently I had to find a little device that measures the electromagnetic field. You know, device that you measure if you have powerful field that might affect your house. And I usually check my house, around the house. So I was looking for this device. I haven't used it for a long time, but I know that I have it. So I'm looking everywhere and I just cannot find it. And I looked in my house, I looked in the basement, I looked in the garage. You cannot find anything in my garage. But I looked everywhere and I couldn't find it. And then I was like, I know I have it. I don't know where to find it. I sat in my chair and I'm like, okay, think. Where is my device? And sure enough, I'm like, logically, I'm thinking, wait a second. That device could only be in my office, in my desk drawer. So I go to my office, open the drawer. It's right there, sitting there in the drawer. Why? Why it's important? Because this is the question. Why do you look for something in the places that you know it's not there? Why do you look for living in the bar? Why do you look for a life in the relationship that are not healthy? Why do you look for life in health, in religion? It doesn't have life in the reason Jesus is the source of life. Look for him there. And they knew it. Because Jesus says, when I would be resurrected, when I would be crucified and resurrected, I will meet you in Galilee. They knew that. It's just that in my case, I sat on my chair and I thought about missing device. They didn't. Why? Because they were stricken by grief. They were stricken by pain. They were stricken by disappointment. I'm not sure if you had experience in your life when you prayed to God, you felt like the prayer was not answered, and you did not cross out Christianity. You did not cross out God completely. You just said something, even on the subconscious level, that Christian thing, that Christianity just doesn't work for me very well. And so that's what's happening here. I want to give you, before I move on, I want to give you this quote by William Barclay, the famous commentator, who says the resurrection of Jesus is an invitation to step into the future with hope, to cease looking for life where there is only death, and to embrace the new world he has opened up. See, that is the point here. Because when you have this loss, when you experience certain challenges to your faith, you have only two ways to go. One way is what disciples did, they ran away. They were like, yeah, maybe that was just 3 years of wasted time. We probably need to cut our losses and move on with our lives and go ahead and caught fish. Go back to our occupation. Or you can do what women did. They were not officially disciples because they were women, and at that point, no offense to you ladies, at that point, women were not counted full-blown members of the body. And so they went to the tomb with their spices to prepare or to make proper burial for that person who was dead in their minds, but whom they still loved. I want to keep that in mind. Just keep that in mind. Who was dead, but whom they still loved. That's important. Because Apostle Paul in Corinthians says that our faith is expressed by love. Some of you feel like your Lord is dead, but I still love him. And you have spices in your hands. And resurrection is invitation to move to the tomb, discover the open tomb, and receive a new hope on the completely different level. That's what resurrection is all about. So let's just go ahead and investigate this account as it is written in Luke 24. On the very first verse, it says, on the first day of the week, which is Sunday, very early in the morning, like at dawn, the woman, there is a lot of different accounts as to how many women, I'm not going to go in there right now, took the spices they had prepared and went to the tomb. See, the thing is, they did not expect in the wildest dreams to see resurrection, to experience resurrections. Not at all. All what they wanted to do was to balm or to put spices on the body. And because they loved Jesus and wanted to honor him and give him proper burial, to put all these spices on him and leave him alone, move on with their lives. At least they did this, and that's the invitation that I have for you. To look at your pain or grief that separates you or confuses you, you look at the shelf and you don't see the reality because you got stuck on that idea that my Lord is dead. My faith is shaken. I don't see future anymore. My life stops at this moment. I give up on life. I don't see any future anymore. I want you to, at this pivotal moment of the moment of resurrection, to move past the open grave to a new life in resurrection power of Jesus Christ. And listen what happened next, verse 2. They found the stone rolled away from the tomb. The funniest part of this story is, I want you to get this, while they were going to the tomb, thinking that they will see the body, at that very moment, God already made through the angels, the stone rolled away. And by the way, the stone was moved not for Jesus to come out, because as we know, Jesus could go through the walls in his resurrected body. He didn't need to have stone to be rolled out. Then why the stone was rolled out? For the women to be able to come to the tomb and face the reality. Some of you today need to face the reality. Yes, we had a tomb. Yes, Jesus was resurrected. And I thought that was the end of my marriage. And I thought it was the end of my relationship. And I thought that that was the end of my life. There is nothing good in my life anymore. I don't see any future anymore. And yet, when I look in reality, with my eyes, spiritual eyes, I see that Jesus has risen and Jesus has purpose for that situation that you experienced. Why? Because at this moment, when they were grieving and moving with the spices to the tomb, God was at the same time, God was rolling the stone. You don't see it. You don't know it. Some of you in your life, God is rolling the stone right now. You don't even imagine. You don't realize that you're still crying. You still have grievances, pain, disappointments, but the stone is rolling away. God is working on your behalf right now, right at this very moment. And so the thing is, they come to the tomb and they realize, wait a second, listen, number 3, verse 3, but when they entered, they did not find the body of the Lord Jesus. See, when life gives you a blow, very strong hit, very painful experience, we get confused, get disoriented. We forget all the promises of God in that very moment. We don't think about the promises of God. Why? Because we go through the pain. And the graveyard shift happens when you start to reliving or embracing spiritual reality. Wait a second, he's not there. I thought that my destiny is the tomb, but instead I received the graveyard shift. I'm praying that somebody here today, before you go home, receive the graveyard shift and experience the resurrection power of Jesus Christ in your heart and your pain and your disappointment. Now listen, in verse 4, while they were wondering about this, suddenly 2 men in clothes that gleamed like lightning stood beside them. That's the angelic beings, and that's the message of resurrection that they break. So I will go into this message of resurrection in my next point, but I wanted to give you this quote, beautiful quote by Alistair Begg, who said, the resurrection tells us that the greatest tragedy is not the death of Christ, but the refusal to see the hope he brings in the midst of our despair. Refusal to see. Do you know what the graveyard shift is all about? Imagine a big puzzle. Those of you who like puzzles. And it's like on the table and it's a mess. You don't know how to put them together. And you try to make sense of it. But you can't until you look at the picture that represents what this puzzle is all about, right? Do you know what graveyard shift is all about? The picture of the puzzle. All of the sudden, all that mess that you see on the table, sometimes your life is a mess that is on the table. Doesn't make any sense. You look at this mess and you're like, my goodness, what have I become? My life. I thought that I was a Christian. I thought I was a disciple. I thought I was a follower of Christ. But look at me. Look at the puzzle. It's a mess. Don't see any sense. And then when you get the spiritual reality that these women experience, the graveyard shift, they all of a sudden saw these pieces of life coming all together in one nice, beautiful picture. And at that point, they are not confused anymore. Graveyard shift. So this story goes and continues in verse 5. In their fright, the women bow down with their faces to the ground, but the man bowed down with their faces to the ground, but the man said to them, the angelic beings, sometimes we see angels with the wings on the back. That's not typically the case. Usually in the Bible, angelic beings are just like men. And so they said to them, why do you look for the living among the dead? And this is the point that I was trying to make earlier. See, because in many cases, when we experience certain challenges to our worldview or our understanding of God, we don't progress to the next deeper level of God. We just leave it alone. And I will be honest with you right now. Do you know how many times in my life I came to God, I came to my tomb, and I said, God, turns out that I don't really know you. Turns out that my confession, it was just the children blubbering. You are bigger than that. You are deeper than that. You know, in our family tradition, we have Christmas gifts when it's kind of weird, but we don't put like last Christmas I bought gym equipment to my son as a Christmas gift, a big one. And how do you put it under the Christmas tree? You can't, it's too big. So what I did was I just put a little box, some funky box under the Christmas tree. And my children, they survey the boxes as they come to the Christmas tree. And they see what these boxes look like. And they sometimes even lift them up and listen and see what it might be. And so I just put something very small, and I put a note. I put a note in the box that your present is actually outside in the gazebo. And so they were he was under the impression that that was just a little, present from 99-cent store. And then when the Christmas came, he opened it up, and he was thinking about one thing, but in reality, it was a completely different thing. Graveyard shift is just like that. You think that God is one thing. You think that following of Christ is one thing. You think that experience as a believer is one thing, and then you open that box, and it has a note, go to the gazebo. Go to that place, because I could not fit my huge gift that I have for you in your 3-pound brain. You would not understand that at this moment. So just go to your grave and realize that the stone was open and Jesus has risen, and there is a hope for you and grace of God upon you, and you can move on with your life, because it was not the end, it was just the beginning. For some of you, you thought it was the end, but today you will experience just the beginning in your walk, serious walk of life, of God, with God. You will experience this renewed commitment to God. Oh, I thought that was just this. Turns out it's a whole different deal. It's a completely different stuff. Francis Chan says, too often we live as if Jesus' resurrection hasn't happened, letting the old ways of sin, death, and fear dominate our lives. I see Christians, I see believers that they think that these spices that they have, it's all what it is. You know, they prepare the spices, they prepare those little things that they apply in their religious experiences. And when they went to the open grave, they realized they don't need spices. They need to go back to the store and return all that stuff that they bought. Sometimes I see Christians and they are just full of spices, full of bitterness, full of smell. Why? Because they don't experience this reality of resurrected Christ in their lives. This is the problem. Now listen what the way how story goes. The angelic being says he's not here. He has risen. Remember how he told you while he was still with you in Galilee. Hey, do you remember that? Let me jog your memory a little bit. Because when you are in a predicament, when you are experiencing the only thing that you are able to focus on, your problem. What about the promises? Resurrection is a promise. He's told you that he will be resurrected. How come you are grieving? How come you are sitting in your pain and self-loathing and self-pity and cannot move on? Jesus has risen, and he has the hope of resurrection for you also. Now listen more. The Son of Man must be delivered over the hands of sinners, be crucified, and on the third day be raised again. Then they remember his word. This is where my part comes in. Well, Pastor Oleg, that message doesn't really apply to me because everything is good in my life. I have a job, I have a business, I have a career. Just hold on to it. Because when you come to your grave, at least you will know that this is not the end of the story yet. The resurrected power of Christ will move you from that experience to the next level. If you choose to be like these women. Because unfortunately, disciples, the 11, they did not. And that's what we do. When we realized that something did not work out the way how we planned, we said, sorry about it, this is not for me. The women decided to face the reality in the grave. I don't see a problem when you come to the Lord with your spices. In fact, I encourage you that and say, Lord, with all my religiosity, with all my Christian upbringing, with all my understanding of the Bible, I do not know you how I should. I call it graveyard shift. I call that experience a graveyard shift. I need to wrap it up with this last point. See, when you experience this graveyard shift, it makes you unstoppable for Christ. It makes you such a bold and powerful witness that nobody can stop. Listen how it's written in the Bible in the verse 9. When they came back from the tomb, they told all these things to the 11 and to all the others. They just were telling left and right. They were not, see, these people who experience graveyard shift, they are not stoppable. They cannot be secret agent Christians, we call them. I'm just, my faith is a private deal. I don't share my faith because I don't want to be in people's hands. If you experience resurrection power of Christ, nobody can stop you. These women ran to 11, and these 11 were apostles or disciples of Jesus Christ. They had authority, they have power, they have credibility. Women did not have anything. And they said, you don't understand, you don't get it. We just visited the tomb. The tomb was empty. The Christ is risen. We experience the spiritual reality, graveyard shift. We know who the living Christ is. Wow. And it's a list, all these people, women who were there. It was Mary Magdalene, Joanna, Mary, the mother of James, and the others with them who told this to the apostles. And this is the trick. 11 verse. But they did not believe the women. Disciples did not believe the women. If you think, if you believe, if you expect people to believe your testimony, think twice. It never works like this. Because see, when they deliver this testimony, witness to the disciples, the Bible says, they did not believe the women because their words seemed to them like nonsense. Have you ever witnessed your face and people look at you like you were saying nonsense? And so what do you do in this situation? On one hand, you can say, you know what, yeah, maybe that's just my subjective experience. I'm not going to share the gospel anymore, but not with these women. You think it's nonsense, but we saw the angels and we saw the testimony of these angels that the Christ was risen. Nobody can stop me. I don't care what you think about my testimony. I know that I was a sinner. I know that I was dead in my sins. I know that I was dying. I was desperate. And then Christ came to my life, and I'm not perfect. And I'm not saying that I got everything figured out, but I know that the power of Christ is moving in my life and nobody can stop me. Resurrected Jesus. That's the story of Easter right here. Peter, however, got up and ran to the tomb. Bending over, he saw the stripes of linen lying by themselves, and he went away wondering to himself what had happened. Some of you will go home today wondering what just happened. But let me just encourage you, be on the sides of these women. Investigate the tomb. Open your eyes to see that it is empty. God has grace for you to move on with your life on the completely different. Listen to this story. Real resurrection, this quote, real resurrection does not slide in easily. It crushes in and demands a rethinking of everything. So if you want to rethink your relationship with God and other people, church, that's Easter story. It demands that. Wait a second. Turns out I was wrong. I did not see God that way. And that's why I am experiencing the tomb today. As long as you face the spiritual reality, honestly and without confusion of your grievances, you will be able to find Him. You will be able to face the reality and move on. I remember, I need to wrap it up, but I remember the story about, maybe you read or watched the video about this last survival of the Twin Tower 1, Janelle Guzman McMillan. She worked in the tower, and then all of a sudden she heard this big boom and the floor was shaking. And there was a lot of screaming, a lot of confusion, a lot of chaos. You know the story. And they decided with a co-worker to take the stairs and go down. And it was somewhere on the 13th floor that the whole building collapsed. And she was just, falling down with all this rubble. Imagine all this dust and all these pieces, construction, concrete, metal beams, falling down 13th floor. Somehow she survived. And she wanted to scream for help, but she said she couldn't. Her mouth, her eyes and ears, everything was covered with dust. And she was laying there. She heard a lot of screaming, and people were begging and asking for help under this rubble. And she thought that she would die. She actually her leg was completely squeezed and squashed in the rubble. Her face was badly damaged. She thought that she would die. And then at a certain point she says, God, if you help me, if you could just rescue me. It seems impossible because you are laying on your knees, you are in the tomb. You are buried alive. Some of you have this experience or feeling that I am buried alive. Life came down on me, crushed on me, to such a degree that I can't even move anymore. I'm talking to you directly right now. If you are experiencing this tremendous crush that beyond your control, the simple prayer, God, please save me from this impossible situation. And then somehow she says, she heard a voice. Hi, is something to the extent, is anybody alive here? I'm here to help you. That was the voice of the rescue worker. They got her out. She was in the hospital for a long time recovering. But the point was, she became a writer and a speaker about this amazing story. She was the last person rescued alive. Amazing story of God rescuing her from this grave that she was buried in alive. In this Easter day, I wonder if you could honestly come to the Lord and say, hey, God, I don't know what he's talking about. I don't know you. I know a lot of different things about the religion. All these sermons, services, teachings. But I need you, God. I need you to rescue me. Could you roll my stone away? I want to experience the reality of resurrected Jesus today. Would you pray that? I believe that God listens to these kinds of prayers. I believe that God delights in answering this kind of prayer. I pray that you experience graveyard shift today before you go home. God, all this religion, faith, Bible, the Bible, just didn't seem plausible to me. I had a bad experience with faith. My prayer was not answered. God did not intervene. God did not save. How is it that the one who was supposed to be deliverer is in the grave, they thought, without realizing, not realizing that that was the plan, part of the plan, the pieces coming together. Show me the picture. Turns out that my hurt, my Golgotha, my cross, was just a part of the story. My friend, when we are worshiping the Lord in the presence of God here, why don't you say this simple prayer? If you want to come forward and pray with us, I would be honored to pray for you. If you just say, God, I don't want a religion, but I want to know you, resurrected Jesus. If you are alive, if this is true, and you are not just a mystical religious symbol, but you are a living person today, I want to know you. Would you reveal yourself to me? There is no embarrassment here. There is no fear. It's a very serious question. Don't be like disciples. Be like these women. I want to experience graveyard shift.